I rise in favor of the A16 amendment. In this time of the importance of secondary, post-secondary education, the greater emphasis on degrees, the fact that more of our jobs are going to require some sort of post-secondary education, it's essential that we look at how can we help more students get these degrees. And one of the problems, of course, is the high cost of higher education. And we have heard story after story about the high cost, the student debt that impairs their lives after college. And so we have some great programs in the state of Minnesota that can actually help students earn both high school and college credit at the same time. We actually have 4 of those programs. And it is essential that parents and students know about all 4 of these options, whether they be post-secondary enrollment options, post-secondary education options, whether it be the International Baccalaureate Program, college in the schools, or advanced placement. 4 ways that our high school kids can get college credit at the same time. Now, while I am supporting this amendment, let me just say that it does not go far enough. What we really need is to make sure that all 4 of those dual enrollment options have the same ability to talk about the benefits of the programs. We currently have an old statute in place that says particularly PSEO cannot talk about the financial aspects and the financial advantages of PSEO. And members, that's wrong. That's a gag rule that should be repealed. We will not repeal it today, but let us just bring forth the awareness that we must repeal that financial gag rule on PSEO. And we know that bills often come back and we're going to have another bite at the apple, and perhaps we will. But it is high time that we do that. But until we do, let us at least support this amendment, which goes a step in that direction.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Madam President and members. This amendment arises out of a need that has been expressed not only in the Education Policy Committee, but in districts across the state. One of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is to be bilingual in this particular day and age, particularly as our globe continues to shrink. And one of the things that a number of our schools are doing is they're offering immersion courses, language taught in that foreign or sometimes that native language. And one of the issues that we've had is that some of our schools bring in immersion teachers from their native lands with their native tongue to come and teach in our immersion schools. And yet our statutes require that they pass the basic skills test in English, even though they are not teaching in English because they're teaching in an immersion school. And so the A12 amendment simply states that that requirement for teachers to pass the basic skills test does not apply to non-native English speakers who are teaching in an immersion program. Of course, the other testing requirements do apply, such as the content and the pedagogy testing. With that, I'll take any questions and ask for a positive vote. This amendment has to do with our charter school authorization. And several years ago, we tightened up our authorization, and we neglected a certain type of organization, which is actually sponsored charter schools in our state. In fact, one of them is one of our most highly performing charter schools. And this amendment simply is going to allow a nonprofit limited liability company for the sole purpose of chartering schools become an authorizer. So it's just one additional correction needed to our authorizing language. I would encourage a yes vote. This particularly deals with the SAM authorizer, which those 4 charter schools would need to close if we do not adopt this language to allow this type of limited liability nonprofit company organization solely for the purpose of charter schools. I would encourage a yes vote. Thank you. This amendment deals with teachers. We know teachers are our most effective in-school variable that we control. And this has to do with that rare instance where teachers have maltreated students. And you might recall the Kyle Herman law that was passed in this body several years ago to deal with that instance. And what we have found since that time is those rare cases where a teacher has maltreated a student, a lot of times then the teacher will leave that district and move on down the road and teach at another district. This is an effort to close that circle. And I've worked with the Department of Education and the Board of Teaching on this, and let me say that it was the Concordia Legislative Affairs Council students who actually noticed that there was still this hole, so to speak, in the law and brought this legislation forward. We refined this legislation, as I said, with the department and the Board of Teaching, and specifically now, should this amendment pass, it just requires that the Department of Education respond within 2 days to a school board's request about a potential teacher. Has there been a case of child maltreatment? And I would encourage a yes vote. Thank you. I rise in favor of this very small, common sense amendment. I can find nothing in here that would be objectionable to anyone. We know that teachers, as I said, are the most influential in-school variable we have when it comes to student achievement. And we want to make sure that school districts have the option when it comes time. And those times, we don't look forward to those times, but I've been on budget reductions committees in school districts. It's a tough thing when teachers need to be laid off. And the current system does require that those layoffs be done in order of seniority. Years ago in my district, it even got down to the point that it wasn't just the day that you signed the contract with the district, it was the time that you signed the contract with the district that determined which teachers stayed and which teachers were laid off. The Senator Pratt amendment gives more negotiating power to the union. It requires simply a negotiated plan. That's all it requires. A negotiated plan. Everything else is permissive. It must negotiate a plan. It may be rated on teacher evaluations, but it may not. And I did misspeak. There's one other element in the Pratt Amendment that is important to note. Nothing in this subdivision allows a school board to use a teacher's remuneration or pay as a basis for making unrequested leave of absence decisions. This very simple amendment gives some local control to our school districts and their negotiating unions to determine when unrequested leaves must take place. What's the plan? We know that in education, a one-size-fits-all plan usually doesn't work. Doesn't work here either. And just to talk about the importance of this, what is happening is that we are losing good people from even going into education. Because would you invest tens of thousands of dollars in a higher education institution to get a teaching degree when you know that no matter how good you are, when a school district has a layoff, you're the first one to go? We've seen a cycle of this in Minnesota where teachers that don't have that built-in Seniority, they're just traveling from district to district, or more often than not, they're leaving the teaching profession. Would you really invest tens of thousands of dollars and years of higher education for a job that you could not stay in based upon your qualifications, only based upon when you signed the contract? Members, we must adopt the Pratt Amendment if we want to continue to put Minnesota students first and make sure that we are honoring all of our teachers. Thank you. Members, this is the Kyle Herman language that we spoke of regarding when a teacher has when there's been a final determination of child maltreatment. And I want to thank Senator Torres Ray for actually bringing that to my attention. The language we have in front of you is the language that was further refined and in the House. And again, this is instead of that A9 amendment that I spoke to earlier. And again, this is about making sure that there's a notation in a teacher's record if there was a final determination of child maltreatment.
Just a minute, Senator Nelson. Please keep the noise down and take your conversations into the hallway. Please, staff members along the wall, please try to keep your voices down or take your conversations in the hallway. Thank you. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Madam President. I won't explain the whole reason for the bill again. That's the same, making sure that in that unusual case, when there's been a case of child maltreatment, it's adequately noted in the teacher's file so that any other school districts are at least aware of that. And again, this is the language adopted in the House. Thank you so much. This amendment has to do with early childhood education scholarships for parent-aware quality early childhood scholarships. That's something that this body, this legislature, has invested in heavily. And we do that because we know that making sure children are ready to learn when they enter kindergarten is one of the best things that we can do to make sure that we graduate learners who are able to succeed and be prepared for college and career. And as a former teacher, I can tell you that it's very difficult to close that huge achievement gap sometimes that a child enters kindergarten with. And that's why these early childhood scholarships are so important, and we've invested significantly in them. One of the things we found out this year was, however, was that these scholarships, Madam President?
Senator Nelson.
Oh, I'm just having a hard time. Listen. Thank you, Madam
Continue,
President.
Senator Nelson.
One of the things we found this year in the scholarships was that they indeed did not go to the parents, as we were told. A number of the scholarships were at the jurisdiction of the commissioner. The commissioner was able to determine that a certain number of the scholarships did not go to the student, did not follow the student, but instead they went to particular entities, to particular programs. In a sense, saying that parents couldn't decide where was the best place for their child to receive that high quality early childhood education, which was rated with the parent-aware. These are parent-aware scholarship dollars. So there is ample opportunity for parents to determine which is the best place for those scholarship dollars, where's the best place for their student. And so the A8 amendment simply strikes that language that says the commissioner may designate a predetermined number of scholarship slots for that program and notify the program of that number. So it appears that the commissioner could determine where the scholarships go instead of having them follow the student. That is not scholarships. That is aid to programs. And so I would encourage a yes vote on the A8 amendment.